Okay, folks, we are ready to roll for a Monday morning here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you stopping by. We do this each and every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We started after conference media days, and we have pledged to be here every morning, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern time at the Voice of College Football to break down the game we all love each and every day with you. We will go for 1 full hour, and then based on your support, if you want us to stick around for 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, I don't have anything until, oh man, I don't know when I've got my next appointment. So, hey, we can talk college football all day if you would like. We've got 2 great guests today and a number of other things that I've got in store in regards to conversations leading into the season. Of course, we are just days away from the week 0 opener, noon Eastern time over in Dublin, Ireland is where the game will kick off. Florida State, Georgia Tech. We also have an SMU Nevada game on Saturday. We will, of course, be all over those. We will do Florida State post game. You can catch that right here. All right, let's get right to it. We've got Cody Stovall stopping by from Locked On OK State. Cody, what's going on today?
Nothing, man. Just one more Saturday without college football. I can't wait. It feels like it's finally here.
Yeah, it's got that feel in the air. I guess depending where you are in the country, that feel might be 98 degrees, but it's got a different feel. You just know it when you're a college football fan. You just sense it. It doesn't necessarily have to be a certain temperature. You just know. And the guys are
Yes, sir.
obviously popping pads a bit on the practice field right now. So I got a few things lined up for you, but of course I want to give you the floor to basically tell us what's ever going on there in Stillwater. So, is there anything of significance going on in camp?
Well, I think the biggest news that has come out recently is an injury to Ollie Gordon, right? Of course, on social media, it grew legs and it got massive. Turns out to be just a minor hip issue. And he did actually start practicing again yesterday to some degree. So I think there's a good possibility he could be ready for week one. I would say right now it would be like a 65, 70% opportunity for him to get a decent amount of carries, but he's not going to be the workhorse in week one. That I can say.
So, does that turn things over to AJ Green, or is there going to be a committee ready to pick him up?
Unfortunately, AJ Green is going to be out for a few months, right? There's a
That's
possibility
right.
he'll be
Okay.
back in November, but it'll depend on, who's kind of joined everybody in the top of the running back room. I think as it sits right now, the plan is to lean a little bit more on Trent Hallen. Trent Hallen was a running back coming out of Indiana. He led the Hoosiers in rushing last year with almost 400 yards at 4.7 yards per clip. He's 6'3", 242 pounds, Mark. He's a massive individual. And you know what? South Dakota State is very good. They won 29 games in a row, back-to-back FCS titles. They return Gronkowski, their quarterback, who won the Walter Payton Award. They also return a running back that is a very talented dude. That is Chaminade, Missouri, in the O'Fallon area. So they're going to have some talented guys, but at the same time, they lost their two starting O-linemen. They lost both of their top wide receivers, and they did lose the running back that rushed for almost 1,600 yards. So they have a lot to replace. And the calling card, I think, this year is going to be more defensively than anything. All eyeballs are going to be on Ollie Gordon in the offense and Alan Bowman and all the returning wide receivers and 7 returning O-linemen, of course. But I think the defense, Mark, is going to surprise a ton of people this year.
Yes. So, DiNardo's crew looking to be much better, worn down a bit at times. And so, give us the evidence that that is going to come true.
Well, returning production is going to be one thing, right? You have 11 dudes on that side of the ball. Oklahoma State returns 10 of those, not to mention the fact that the depth behind those 10 are also a significant number of dudes that have played. For instance, Justin Wright. Justin Wright brought over like 220 some odd tackles from Tulsa, went through a devastating knee injury last year, but we also saw the emergence of Nick Martin becoming an All-American, 140 tackles, leading the Big 12 in like 7 categories this previous season. He's back, right? Kendall Daniels has beefed up a little bit more. He's almost 250 pounds, still can run a 4.59 40, and we've obviously brought him up closer to the line as a linebacker as well. In the back end of the defense, we have Lyric Rawls returning. He might take a little bit more of a free safety role, but we have Cam Epps behind him, who had 3 interceptions, I believe, this previous season. So the communication last year was year one for Brian Nardo's 3-3-5, and you did see a decent amount of difficulty in the communication department passing off, the identifications to the linemen, to the linebackers. The communication this year is significantly smoother. So we don't have to focus on the KISS method. And install last year, it took us 12, 13 days to install. This year, we're getting things done in like 5 or 6 days.
Cody Stovall getting things done there at Locked On OK State. It's all day O State. You see his X handle right there. Follow him for everything concerning the Cowboys trying to get back to a Big 12 championship game this year. OK State, O State. I've always said OK State. Is it O State? Is there some kind of conflict with Ohio State? Is there any kind of arguments that you guys have on message boards about who claims that?
Well, of course, like Ohio State trademark the Ohio State, right? So they could put T in front of theirs. But if you notice, Ohio State, Oregon State, Oklahoma State were the only ones that actually use OSU.
Yes, they all 3 use it. Okay.
Not
But I say
Ohio
OK
State
State.
has they don't have an OSU logo.
They don't have a logo. No, they don't. Okay. So there you go. There, that answers your question. You got to see the T in front of the OSU, I guess, or the OHSTATE, and then we've got Oregon State as well. And then we've got confusing colors between the Beavs and the Cowboys. There.
Correct. Yes.
Do you call them the Pokes? Is that disrespectful? But you can call them the Pokes, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah,
That's
100%.
not an issue.
No.
Okay. Just making sure. Again, I go with OK State. I'm not an O State guy. When I'm talking about the Cowboys, I personally say OK State.
I think the only one that's ever deemed as somewhat disrespectful is when people say Okie State, right? Sometimes it's used as a little derogatory shot.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. I would think that Alan Bowman's been around long enough that he should have sorted all this out for his own personal preferences, because I saw something just in the last few days, and this is no big surprise to anyone, the least of all you, that he's the third oldest player in the country.
Yeah, he's definitely working on an AARP membership, but as long as his AARP can equal a high QBR, I'm okay with it.
We had our buddy Josh Neighbors on the other day. He is not as impressed with Alan Bowman. He does not believe that he's a championship level quarterback.
Well, if we get the Alan Bowman from last season, right, I can't fault Josh, right? That would be an accurate assessment more often than not, because Alan Bowman did have a propensity last year to kind of run around and get outside of the pocket, right? But he's not a running quarterback, even though he did put a nice little juke move on somebody in Bedlam. That's not going to be his cup of tea. What we've seen this offseason in spring and fall camp is a more balanced inside the pocket Alan Bowman. He's not bailing out. He's not throwing in the stands as much. He's standing in the pocket. And with 7 returning offensive linemen, 5 of which have over 172 starts between them, there's no need for him to bail out of the pocket, right? And we're seeing that maturation process. I didn't think that somebody could mature in the pocket after 7 years of collegiate football, but at least thus far, it appears as though that's the case. Now, our linebackers and DNs aren't jackknifing in and diving at the quarterbacks, which does change things a little bit. So we won't really know until the lights come on and the bullets start flying, as they say. But as it sits right now, if he can stick his happy behind in the pocket, I think we have more than enough weapons to have a phenomenal season. I almost liken this to a Trent Dilfer situation, right? You don't have to do too much, but you have more than enough talent that as long as you don't massively screw things up, you should be okay.
Yeah, just make the simple throws. Don't make mistakes.
Yeah, the touchdown to interception ratio has to change. If it does, then we have a really good shot. If it doesn't, then Josh isn't entirely wrong.
So I've long since admired Mike Gundy, as many have across the nation, for what he's been able to, well, he first inherited from Les Miles, but it certainly built upon it. In some ways inherited a mess, but in regards to building a program, also he was given a better program than Les Miles was given. But of course, now he's been around for 17 years, 18 years plus, whatever the figure is, 2005, right?
Yes, sir.
2005, folks. He's been around as long as anybody in the country outside of Kirk Ferentz, I believe.
Well, I think Kyle Whittingham was hired like 2 months before Gundy.
Okay. Yeah. Taking over for Urban Meyer. Yes. Okay. So just to get that all squared away, he's a fixture. He's a legend in Stillwater. And I've long since admired what he's been able to do, of course, because typically you're looking at what the experts would say are top 35 talent teams, and often being top 10 or 15 team in the country. So I see 2 units here. You mentioned the offensive line. And as I have been perusing these preview magazines and studying up, and you mentioned all the career starts coming back along the offensive line, that this is being rated. Phil Steele has this unit like top 5 in the country. How did this come to be? Was this just kind of they cycled into a lucky situation to a certain extent, or developed these guys? I guess it's got to be a lot of things.
It's a little bit of both, right? We did look out. So the starting 5 offensive linemen, every single one of them is a 6th year senior, right? So They all came in together for the most part, other than Dalton Cooper, who we were able to bring in last season. And, even Dalton Cooper, he brings over from Texas State. He had 1,368 snaps without allowing a sack. He did so again last season. PFF has our center graded as one of the top 5 in the country as well. Not to mention the fact that we bring in Isaiah Glass, who has like 21 starts at Arizona State. We also have Taylor Materko, who came in with this original 6-year senior class. He's also a 6-year as a backup. Then we have Jason Queso Brooks for 2 years in a row, has scored out the highest in practice of all of our O-linemen. So it's not just the starting 5. It's the fact that we've got 3 backups that have double-digit starts in the Power 4 in the Big 12 as well.
And then it's the linebacker unit as well. That's one of the best in the nation that many people don't know about. So right. What is making those guys so good?
Well, so it's funny you say that. There was 2 different publications that have put Oklahoma State top 5 linebackers in the country, and that was before Kendall Daniels was moved to linebacker. So people were giving Oklahoma State's linebacker room a lot of credit when Kendall Daniels was still classified as a safety. Now Kendall Daniels being up as a linebacker makes this group entirely more dangerous. You have the All-American returning leader and tackles for the Big 12. He was the returning leader in sacks and tackles for loss as well. From a linebacker perspective, then you have Justin Wright coming over with his 220-plus tackles from Tulsa after a devastating knee injury last year. The backup is a Stillwater High School alum, Gabe Brown, 6'2", 232 pounds. He's playing a lot of really good football. And then you have Colin Oliver, the freshman All-American, who is significantly bigger now. He's put on over 35 pounds in the last couple of years, and he's getting to do a lot more hand in the dirt stuff. So he's going to kind of rotate between linebacker and defensive end this season, which was kind of reminiscent of what we saw from him his freshman year.
Our buddy Mike 3883 probably echoes what a lot of people across college football, especially in Big 12 country, are saying in terms of their rooting interests of getting Oklahoma State and Mike Gundy to a playoff before OU, because of course they turned their back on the league, and to get OK State after they've had to take abuse on the field and otherwise from OU to get Mike Gundy to a playoff and win a playoff game would be pretty sweet. I'm sure that that would make your year.
It would. Well, and you know what, Mark, to be honest, with 21 returning starters and over 90% of the roster returning, if we don't win one now, I don't know when we're going to. I mean, that's just numerically speaking, not even to take into consideration. We have like 35 seniors and like 16 redshirt juniors. This whole locker room is nothing but grown men. Mike, I'm saying this is our first opportunity, okay, to look like BYU on the grading report at the end of the year. This is our moment.
Let's get back to this Mike Gundy thing, because I saw something, and I don't want to misquote it. I think you were involved. I don't know that you were the originator of the post, but it had something to do with whatever Mike Gundy's win total is. Maybe if he's looking at, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 wins this year, that's going to push him to a certain place in college football. So if you're on par with what I'm getting at, maybe you can clarify the statistic.
I don't know precisely what you're getting at, but I mean, just from an overall wins perspective, I think currently Gundy's like 4th of current coaches when it comes in the wins department. And he's battling right there with somebody like a Dabo Swinney. So if this were to be a year that Mike Gundy were to exceed 10 wins again, I think he would pass not only Dabo Swinney, but he would clearly make a distinction between him and Kyle Whittingham as well.
Okay. I saw something crazy about him being one of the 10 greatest coaches of all time. And I like Mike Gundy. I think he's doing a fabulous job. But I thought somebody was just based on pure numbers going to justify that he was a top 10 all-time coach.
Well, from a wins perspective, right, he could end up in that pretty quickly. But, being a diehard Cowboy, my biggest, I think, complaint would be the fact that we have a lot of wins, but we don't have any championships to go. We have one championship to go with it, right? And then if you dig back to those Bedlam years when we had Mason Rudolph and James Washington and Justice Hill and Chuba Hubbard and all those dudes, we played, right, for the de facto Big 12 title 7 times and lost every single time. So if he has even a couple more Big 12 titles, I think that there's an argument here. But just off of wins, I don't know that I would put him quite that high.
I don't think people realize how many guys have coached in the history of college football. Like you could be number 40 on that list and you could be a great coach. There are just a lot of guys on the list. And maybe you start the list a little bit later in history. There'd be people that would start from Amos Alonzo Stagg in 1900, and then you're taking in all sorts of other dudes. Or maybe you separate it out since 1940 or 50 or something like that. But I just came across that post. I thought you might remember, because I remember seeing your name attached to it at some point, and I thought, okay, do I jump on this and go crazy, or maybe I just bring this up to Cody the next time? Because I went after West Virginia last night, and now I'm hearing it from a lot of West Virginia fans when they're misinterpreting what I stated. I don't know if you saw this post from Neil Brown. He was on the SEC network, which was my first question. Why is Neil Brown on the SEC network? Do they play an SEC team? No, they don't even play an SEC team this year. So anyway, I guess they're bored. So they had him on the SEC network, and there was some top 100 list of the top 100 college football players that might have originated in the SEC network, which wouldn't surprise me if they had like 92 SEC players on their top 100 list, because that's how they typically approach college football there. They do a great job within the conference, but anytime they talk about anything national, they go off the rails and they're completely delusional.
Yep.
But he was upset.
It's so funny you mentioned that, because I covered that in Friday's show. At the top 100, there were 12 Big 12 representatives, but you are right. It was very, very, very SEC heavy.
Which I don't have it depends how heavy. It's still probably the best conference in college football.
Right, correct.
But the point I made actually was, so Neil Brown got on there and he was he didn't seem too tongue-in-cheek, but it wasn't like he was pounding his desk or anything, raving mad. But he basically said, well, this is ridiculous that we don't have any players in the top 100. We've got a quarterback in Garrett Green that should be in the top 100. And we've got, I apologize, I don't know the offensive lineman, who's a projected first or second round draft pick that he was stating should be in the top 100. And he called them incompetent and either stupid or that they didn't know what they were doing. They don't know anything about football. That's a direct quote. They don't know anything about football. And I thought, I completely respect him sticking up for his players and him going to the mat. But to be logical about it, I said, let's understand, there are 70 power teams. So let's say nobody from the group of five, and I don't necessarily agree that this is going to turn out to be the case, but none of them are top 100 players. None. We still have 70 teams in the Power Five. So you can only have like 1.3 players on average per. So it's tough to squeeze. We're not talking about like that's a pretty elite list. So the only thing I said was Garrett Green completed 53% of his passes. I don't have an issue with Neil Brown sticking up for him, but to say that he's definitely top 100 and you don't know what you're talking about and you know nothing about football because you left off Garrett Green, I think is a bit ridiculous. But I understand where he's coming from.
Now, I don't think Garrett Green's quite on the top 100, but I will say the argument that Neil Brown deserves to have is they do have Avery Johnson in the top 100. And Garrett Green is pretty much a mirror image of Avery Johnson. The difference is he's been a starting quarterback for a year and a half now. So the fact that they put Avery Johnson in there after 4 games is a little frustrating if I'm a Neil Brown when I'm looking at a Garrett Green, because it's like, well, Garrett's the same player. Garrett runs a 4.40, and Garrett actually was a starter for an entire season. My biggest complaint actually was the fact that Nick Martin didn't make the list. I mean, he had 36 more tackles than Danny Stutzman. He had more sacks than Danny Stutzman, the same tackles for loss as Danny Stutzman. It just, statistically speaking, he led Danny Stutzman in literally every single category, physically, possibly, except for one, which was forced fumbles. Danny Stutzman had one more forced fumble than Nick Martin, yet Danny Stutzman's in there. That was my only complaint, but I appreciate Neil Brown doing that, right? Kind of putting it out there that there is a little bit of a facade whenever you come up with some of these lists, especially when they're predicated upon ESPN and their assessments, right? But Yeah, I don't know. I'd put Garrett Green up there. Now, that O-lineman, that might be a different story because people are forgetting they're a 9-4 ball club that returns like 85% of their roster. So, yeah, I think West Virginia is getting disrespected, even though I don't know that I'd put Garrett up there.
So, Scotty, on the point of Martin against Stutzman, what validates your point even further is they played like competition. Much of their schedule overlapped. It's not like you
Correct.
could say, okay, somebody played a bad schedule and somebody played a brutal schedule. We'd have to go back to see exactly how many teams overlapped, but even the ones that didn't overlap are comparable teams.
Yeah.
They played in the same league. So. Number 17, I believe, was the ranking by the AP in the coaches poll, or maybe Kansas State and Oklahoma State. I noticed they were
17 in the AP, 18 in the coaches.
Yeah. I've done a lot to kind of discourage people from putting too much value in that. For one thing, Cody, the top 25 teams in the country the last 3 preseasons. So if you put them together, that's 75 teams. The AP got it right 39. They got 39 of the 75. So they're batting just above 50%.
Well, it's almost like a catch-22, isn't it? Right? The preseason poll pretty much means nothing. But at the same point in time, if you start the season top 15 and you don't lose, you will creep up into the top 5 pretty easily. I think if you start the season ranked number 40 and you go 7-0, you might crack the top 25. So you do have a much steeper hill to climb. So, I mean, it's almost pointless. But at the same time, if you are a top 10 team that has a somewhat manageable schedule, it's really easy to scoot up in that top 25 or top 5 very quickly. So it's a catch-22.
It used to mean everything. It no longer, technically, it doesn't mean anything. However, we don't know how it impacts perception, how it impacts the college football playoff committee, because it's kind of a self-perpetuating narrative. If the teams that are ranked preseason do a decent job, they're going to stay ranked, and it perpetuates this. Well, you just played a ranked team. Well, why are they ranked? Well, we ranked them, kind of thing.
Right. Yeah.
Like I remember there was a season about 7 or 8 years ago where Michigan State had 4 straight top 25 teams they were playing, but by the end of that top 25 run, they hadn't played any top 25 teams because every time they beat somebody, they knocked them out of the top 25. So suddenly they haven't played any top 25 teams. And 4 weeks ago, they were playing all these top 25 teams.
Well, I think you can liken it to even like an Ohio State last year or Michigan. Sorry. Whenever you look at Michigan's schedule last season, right, then they start the year top 5. They were not going to lose a game for the first 10 weeks. No. Just, so Michigan knew the minute that the polls came out in conjunction with their schedule, all they've got to do is just take care of business, and they're going to stay in the top 5 pretty much no matter what, even if they were to lose to Ohio State. So it is very pointless to some degree, but it does matter. Like you just said, perception. We're in an age where NIL, transfer market recruiting, and high school kids are getting less and less recruited. Therefore, if you're on the national scene and you're on all the commercials for game days and stuff, it is beneficial.
Yeah, for anybody who doesn't think that the preseason poll is a predictor of what the rankings are going to look like. Now, obviously, you could be number 5 in the country preseason, and if you go 4-8, you're not going to be ranked. So obviously, the results are going to take care of it to a certain extent. But take this Georgia-Clemson game, for example. Georgia's number 1, Clemson's 14. If Georgia loses that game by a field goal, it's a great game, they lose. What is Georgia dropping to? 7?
I don't even think they go that far.
Yeah, they may not even drop that. And Clemson's going to vault.
Right.
And however, but if Georgia enters that game and they're unranked, if they're completely unranked and play the same exact game, they're going to stay unranked after they lose to Clemson by a field goal.
Yep.
So how is that consistent in any way? It's not.
It's a glorified beauty pageant to some degree, but it's a necessary evil, unfortunately, I guess.
Well, it's going to stick around because it's fun and people love rankings. And I do too. I think it's fun. I do a top 25 that actually makes sense, that's based on results. So I don't do a preseason one, but I did one this year because I had enough people saying, we want you to do a top 25 that actually makes sense. And I said, well, the reason it makes sense is because it's only based on results. So I can't do a preseason one. And they said, do one anyway. And so I tried to base it on last year and then some logical deduction of who did everybody gain, who did everybody lose, make some kind of logical deduction. That's like people that think that the last year's national champion should start number one the next season. That's all well and good if that's the way you want to approach it. But if you're going to approach that for the national champion, then you have to do that for everybody else, because why would that just apply for the national champion? So then you just take the final poll from the end of the season after the bowl games and you start the next season. That I don't agree with that, but if you're going to do it for the national champion, you would have to do it for everyone else.
The only thing that I find slightly perplexing is how late into the game the first, CFP style poll comes out. I do wish maybe it was a couple weeks earlier so we'd get a decent barometer, because until then, the AP and the coaches poll are a guide. And I would say, traditionally speaking, though, the CFP polls are within a few typically of the AP, right? It's not going to be crazy. If the AP has somebody number 8 in the country, the CFP is not going to have them 18 more often than not. So, the polls are a decent barometer for what we're going to anticipate for the CFP. Other than that, it is just a dog and pony show.
Absolutely. So one last thing on that same point.
Hit me, Goose.
So if to me, this is what I think proves that there's too much groupthink concerning this. Obviously, the AP came out about a week to 10 days after the coaches poll. And like I said, almost every spot was exactly the same. Or if there was a difference, it was by one. Right. I think late in the poll, Kansas and NC State were too different. They just flip-flopped like 22-24. If we isolated these people, Cody, everybody that had a vote from the end of last season, national championship game, then we put you in some kind of chamber and you couldn't watch social media. You couldn't be persuaded by anybody's opinion, but you got all the information you needed. You got everybody's rosters. You got all the information to just make an isolated opinion of college football. There is no way that these polls would be that close, and everybody would think Georgia's the best, Ohio State's second best, on down the line. Mm-hmm. There's just no way that we would have far greater diversity of opinion.
Agreed. Well, I mean, part of the argument, I think, is pushed by a lot of the social media, but it would be the same thing as if, like, you were to have a comparison between Ollie Gordon and Taj Brooks and Etienne, right? Who's the best running back in the country? They do see that stuff, and it does kind of perpetuate more and more fuel for the quality of a team. So, it does guide it. So I don't think you could lock yourself in the room and get it 100% right.
Cody, we appreciate you being here. Let everyone know where to catch your work.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. Thank you much. Locked On Oklahoma State. I do pretty much a daily show. And then as the season progresses, obviously, we'll be doing some live stuff at Aldeo State on Twitter. And then when it comes to Facebook and Instagram, it's O State all day.
Cody, we love your fire and enthusiasm. We appreciate you being here. You know that. You're always welcome.
Well, thank you very much, Mark. Yeah, it's always an honor. I appreciate you, and I can't wait for this season. It's going to be a good one all the way across the board. We can focus on football for now. I think there's more realignment and craziness coming, but we'll cross that road when we get there. It's football season, baby. I appreciate you, Mark. God bless. Go, Pokes.
Cody Stovall, Locked On OK State, joined him right there. We continue here, the voice of college football. We're going to talk some Texas ball. We got Matthew Miller stopping by. And, of course, Matthew hosts our Texas Longhorns live show. That's coming up tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern time on the Texas channel. Matthew, what's going on today?
Nothing much, Mark. How are you doing?
I am doing well. And let's get it revved up with what's talked about most concerning Texas football is that CJ Baxter went down, then Christian Clark. I don't know how much he was going to factor in, but he went down just a few days later. And so alarms are sounding across the country concerning Texas and who's going to play running back. But we know one guy for sure.
Yeah, Jaden Blue's going to be the starter now. I thought he's going to be the starter anyways, personally. I liked him a little bit better than CJ Baxter, but it was going to be like 55-45 when we talk about carry percentage-wise. So it was going to be pretty close there. I'm not really worried about the running of the running backs. I'm worried about the pass blocking now. And those pass protection situations, are you able to pick up those blitzes? Are you able to pick up exotic blitzes? We're going to know that pretty quickly because guess what? Week 2, Michigan, week Martindale. In the NFL, he loved the blitz. He was the inventor of that defense. He's going to love the blitz week 2. So I think that's going to be interesting how Jarrett Gibson picks those up. I think Trey Wisner, who he's going to be listed as the backup. I don't think at the end of the year we're going to look back and he has the second most carries. He just doesn't have the body built for that. He's more of a hyped up version of Keelan Robinson. I think that's what you'll see out of him. I think Jarrett Gibson is going to have to grow up quickly, but this is a guy that comes from IMG Academy, which is basically a football factory down there in Florida. Fourth running back in the class last year coming out. And I think he's going to have a good freshman season. He's built like a tank. He's 5'10", 205, 210 pounds. So can he pick up the blitzes? I think he has the body to be able to pick up the blitzes. Is he able to see what's in front of him to pick up the blitzes is the more important part. We'll have to see. And that's obviously a big question mark now. I made the comment where we weren't going to win the national championship because of CJ Baxter or get there. But he was definitely going to play an integral role in that, obviously being either the starting running back or sharing carries with Jaden Blue. So it definitely hurts, but I think it just puts more on Quinn Ewers' shoulders now.
I saw a few overreactions from national publications that I would expect a little more sense out of, that basically Quinn Ewers is just going to have to throw the ball 50 times a game. You don't win a national championship throwing the ball 50 times every game. I understand maybe leaning that direction just slightly, but you got to be able to run the ball, and you've got a great offensive line.
Yeah, 100%. The offensive line is looking really good in camp. We got another little scare at the scrimmage yesterday. Jake Majors came out in a walking boot, and everyone freaked out immediately. But anyone that's been following Texas under Steve Sarkisian, literally if you cut off your pinky toe or whatever, you lose the nail on your pinky toe, you're getting a walking boot. So it doesn't matter what the injury is. If it's gangrene, you get a walking boot. If it's what is that? The pinky nail gone, you get a walking boot. Did you lose me, Mark?
We still have your audio, Matthew. You've just frozen in a position that looks good. If you can see yourself there, you're making a point, but we can hear you.
Okay.
So we are good to go unless you want to disconnect real quick and jump back in.
Oh, you're good as long as you can hear. As long as you can hear me, that matters.
Okay.
But it's just precautionary. It's a high ankle sprain. If the game week was this week, he'd be able to play. He'll be able to play come Colorado State. Now, maybe they hold him out versus Colorado State because no offense to Colorado State. It's Colorado State versus Michigan, or it's Colorado State first week and the Michigan second week. And Kyle Flood said at the beginning of the show, beginning of the spring practice or fall practice, he said, we have 7 guys we trust. He said Neto, Cole, and then the starters along with that are the 7 guys he trusts. They're going to rotate the guards a lot this year, not just because they think that's a weakness or anything. It's because they think those guys are really good and they deserve playing time. So you're going to have 7 guys play at the offensive line position. It kind of reminds me of Michigan last year where they kind of said the same thing. We have 7, 8 pros, and Texas has 7 pros this year. So they're going to play a lot of offensive linemen. And I think it's going to matter the certain situation too. We'll have to see. I'm not saying, I know we talked about it. It was pretty funny. Vanderbilt, where they're going to rotate based on like, hey, if they're really good on this play, we're going to put them in. That's a tell. It's more of pass, run, maybe, or red zone. They'll use a lot of those guys.
Yeah, I'm going to have to look at this again, but the way it reads in one of the major publications, I believe it was Athlon's, is that Vanderbilt has determined that who their 2 best offensive linemen are, and they're just going to be, we're running right, boom. They're going to play right guard and right tackle this play. We're running left, or we're going to throw this. So we're going to move them over there.
As I know Tim Beck very well, as an offensive play caller, this does not surprise me that he's doing that because no offense to him, he's a fantastic recruiter. I don't think he's very good at calling plays. We'll just
You
say
got to
that.
be pretty thin
Yeah.
to have that approach too. Like these are the only two guys that can block anybody on our team. All right, we've got Matthew Miller here talking Texas football. And if I've got it right, I did see the note on the player you're talking about in the walking boot. He's the starting center who's like a fourth-year senior, correct?
Yeah, Jake Majors, fifth-year senior, good player. And they've talked about that in the scrimmage too. They put all the running backs are in green jerseys now. They were not touched basically, as soon as the play bounced outside of the tackles, you could not touch them. So inside, you could hit them. You couldn't take him to the ground. You could hit him, but outside of that, you're not allowed. And I think Steve Sarkisian talked about this in one of his press conferences after practice. You don't need a starting 22 anymore. You need a starting 44 because of how long the season is. You need 44 guys you can trust. And that's why we've seen a heavy rotation at every position group through the fall camp for Texas. All 6 wide receivers are playing a lot. They're having every guy other than Ryan Wingo, and I think it's because he's a freshman. They don't want to put too much on his plate, rotating from outside to inside. Every one of those guys is getting outside or inside reps. They were playing a lot of running backs even before the injuries, obviously rotating offensive linemen. And then the thing that didn't surprise me, because I told you after SEC Media Days, Mark, I said Jalen Gilbo is going to be the breakout star. He seems to have taken Jahdae Barron's inside job at the nickelback. And Jahdae Barron's a really good player at the nickelback position. But again, I always thought Jahdae Barron, if he's coming back, is going to play safety, cornerback, and nickelback, kind of rotate to pump up his NFL stock. Because if he truly just wanted to play nickelback, he could have went in the NFL, been like a 5th round pick. I think he wanted to bump that up a little bit. So I think he'll actually probably end up being the starting cornerback. So a lot of this is just, it's interesting. The one big word Sark preached the whole offseason: versatility, versatility, versatility. And you see all these guys playing a lot of different positions and a lot of different formations, trying out everything. And him saying he wants 44 guys to go, I think he really means it. And with these injuries, he's kind of toned down practice to the point of, hey, I'm kind of taken away from my NFL stuff. In the NFL, these guys don't really hit each other that much during practice. That's why you see, no offense, the first 3 to 4 weeks of the NFL is a terrible product to me because they didn't play preseason. They didn't really practice, and they're basically just getting out the jitters and everything out there in the first couple of weeks. So could Texas probably struggle earlier on in the season? Yeah, that could definitely happen, and that could come back to hurt the Michigan game. But then overall, late in the season, you're healthier. You're clicking on all cylinders, and in a 12-team playoff, I think that probably matters more. Yeah, I could see that as well.
Folks, please like the video, subscribe here at the Voice of College Football. As you see right there, Matthew hosts our Texas show. It's every Monday. It's Monday, folks. Guess what? Monday. So it's tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern time. If you love Texas, obviously that's the choice to make. If you hate Texas, that's the choice to make. You know what? If you don't care about Texas, if you're neutral on Texas, but you love college football, you got to keep up with this team.
Hey, and especially tonight, because I have predictions. It's all predictions tonight.
People love predictions, tearing up predictions. We're going to do our prediction show on Thursday, everyone. But Matthew's got his picks tonight. So I'm going to take on a topic that you may or may not have seen that I believe I discussed here, but I also posted a video on this. And I don't expect you in any way to defend Texas because I don't think that they're marching into the SEC offense or office demanding an easy schedule. But to compare their schedule to Oklahoma's schedule is just, it's insane, the difference. I don't think that any league should be processing schedules that have that much disparity to them.
No, and I think it's funny the way they did it because it ended up perfectly for Texas. So I guess they took the last 10 years win percentage wise is how they came up with the schedule. So your schedule was harder, the better win percentage you had or whatever. They tried to even it out. I forget. It was one of the two. And obviously Oklahoma has been the much better program the last 10 years. And then Texas, kind of last year and then the year before was building towards being better. And then now I think Texas does have a better roster overall. And I'm not saying a lot. I think Texas probably has the fourth best roster. I think Oklahoma's somewhere in the 8 to 10 range. But yeah, and then they get the schedule that they do. Yeah, it's pretty funny. Obviously, if we're just talking SEC, it's pretty clear. It evens out slightly, Michigan. But yeah,
they don't play anyone. Yeah.
No, they play literally no one outside of conference. And But yeah, it's really hard. Like you said, I think Texas A&M would be their second easiest game. It's probably our second hardest game, maybe our third, but still, I mean, it's crazy. They definitely do have a hard schedule, and they're also probably one of those teams we talk about. If Florida goes 9-3, if they go 9-3, they probably have a debate to sneak into the playoff.
So you've mixed it up with the Michigan guys a few times. Has anything that they've had to say? Because I would say, just my own barometer in talking to the fans here every day, that was considered to be a slam dunk Texas win after the national championship game and after the NFL draft. Even though Texas lost 10 players, Michigan lost 13, and obviously the quarterback and more star players. So has anything that you guys have talked about caused you to be more concerned about this game?
No, because like really early in the offseason, like basically a month after the championship game, I kind of thought that way. But then I started looking at the roster and realized who they have coming back. And I'm like, this game's not going to be easy because their defense, in my opinion, is the best in the country. They have basically what we had last year on the interior, but they have that with the best cornerback in the country on the outside. So it's definitely going to be hard. The thing I do hate, though, is I guess it's because you have to do it. But I hear a lot from Michigan fans is, well, people said this last year. They do not have the same team as last year. You can't just use that as a reasoning is because of last year. You don't have J.J. McCarthy. You don't have Jim Harbaugh. You don't have a lot of those guys on offense. You don't have some of those guys on defense. This isn't the same year. It's not copy, paste, and repeat. That's not how this works. Even when Georgia went back-to-back, it was a different-looking Georgia team and a different path they took, and they weren't as good. But guess what? They still won the national championship. If that's your argument, that's fine. But you can't just say it's going to turn out the same way just because you have a system in place. That's not how this works. And it's going to be interesting because I went back and thought about it. So my point when I do go on that show is probably going to be about how I thought Ohio State last year protected Kyle McCord pretty well. Am I wrong on that, Mark?
No, you were not.
And I think
protected.
Yep. Yeah, and I think Texas' offensive line is just as good at that. And I don't think anyone in any comment section on YouTube, unless they're just like Kyle McCord's father, would argue that Quinn Ewers is worse than Kyle McCord.
No.
So I think Quinn Ewers, if he has that time, will be able to dice up that defense. And I know you have really good players, but the thing is, we've seen this throughout history. When a really good quarterback, or at least a good quarterback, has time to throw the football, they're able to make plays. The reason Michael Penix was not able to make plays versus Michigan, he had no time in the pocket. He was constantly moving either up in the pocket or side to side in the pocket, and it did not work out for him. If he had time, and if he actually threw the ball as well as he did versus Texas, or even 75% like he did versus Texas, Quinn Ewers will be able to make plays. I also think Steve Sarkisian, with this much time to prepare, does a really good job. We saw that in the Alabama game. And I made the point with TJ, and he agreed with me on this. The first game for these teams, take nothing away from it. When Texas plays Colorado State, it's not the same. When Michigan plays Fresno State, it's not going to be anywhere near the same. These guys are going to hold all their bullets in their chamber. They're going to play very vanilla. I remember when Texas played Rice last year, and I overreacted. I said, what the hell is this? If we play like this, we're going to get killed by Alabama. The next week, it's nowhere near the same team. And I'm like, oh, it's because Steve Sarkisian just didn't give a crap about Rice. He was preparing for Alabama the whole time. It's going to be the same thing with Colorado State. Colorado State will probably put up points because guess what? They have a pretty good quarterback. They have an NFL wide receiver, and they have Jay Norvell, who's a pretty good play caller. And this is their big game. This is like Texas versus Texas, or this is like Michigan for Texas. This is how big of a game it is for them. So I expect Colorado State to probably score 21 to 24 points, probably score through the air a decent amount, and people are going to overreact to that. Don't overreact. Wait till week 2.
Moose making a comment that he was picking Michigan before the running backs got hurt, and now he's even more confident. The only thing I would ask Moose to do is probably line up his actual prediction record on Michigan games over the last decade versus what their actual record is. I would like to know how many times he actually, in fact, picks Michigan to lose games.
Well, and also on that point, I've seen that point made by Michigan fans. So you thought we were going to run on you is what you're saying. You didn't think that before. Come on, man. The only difference you could make in that point is we're going to be able to get to Quinn Ewers now because the guys can't pick up blitzes. If that's your point, I can't say anything to that because I haven't seen other than one guy in Jade Blue pick up blitzes consistently. The other two guys I don't know about. But running, we probably weren't going to be able to run versus Michigan anyways. It was probably going to be exactly what it was like versus Alabama. I think we averaged like 3 to 4 yards per carry just to keep you honest and then attack you over the top. That's going to be.
Oh, we believe we've lost Matthew. Maybe you back?
Yeah,
there
I'm
you
back.
are. Okay.
Oh, did I basically said the running backs didn't matter
Okay.
in that they weren't able to. I didn't think they're going to be able to run anyways. So I don't think that makes that much of a difference other than, again, if you were able to pick up blitz protection and blitz packages, if you didn't think they were able to do that.
Matthew on the Texas Show tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Again, the Texas Show on the Texas Channel, 7 p.m. Eastern Time here at the Voice of College Football. He's got his predictions lined up tonight. So people love predictions. So I am interested to hear what Matthew is going to line up, because I don't know that I've heard anyone. So these are going to be SEC and national predictions.
Yes, I went out there on a limb of certain conferences, but I ended up with the same result in the end of who I think is going to be in the national championship game.
Yeah.
But I went on the limb in conferences, and also have a 4-way tie in the SEC for second place. And I have no idea how I'm supposed to break that, because guess what? The SEC doesn't have any rules on how you break that. Isn't that pretty interesting? 12 days from now, we're going to kick off SEC football. They have no rules. So
I guess they'll probably figure out at some point in the season who they want to have play in the SEC championship game. Then they'll come up with rules.
yeah,
I don't know. That's kind of how they do some things down there. Yeah, it'll be fascinating. I don't know that I've seen any predictions this offseason that have not included Georgia, Ohio State, and Oregon as a national champion. I don't know that I've heard or seen anybody pick any other team to win the national championship.
I have one of those teams winning, but I don't have. I have a certain team winning the Big Ten. People are not going to think winning the Big Ten.
Oh, okay. Interesting. All right. Good stuff. Can't wait to see that. Okay, Matthew. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Mark.
Matthew Miller. It's Monday nights on the Texas Channel, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. We got McD stopping by for a little college football conversation. What's going on, McD?
Mark, you hear me?
Thanks for being patient. We appreciate you. Yes, we can hear you.
All right, Mark, how you doing? It's been a minute.
I'm good. I know.
Yeah, I've just been busy with work and everything. I want to give my official Maryland Terps prediction, game by game. If that's okay.
Okay. I will pull up the schedule as we do that.
All right. So week 1 is against UConn, the Randy Edsel Bowl. The Maryland Terps will win that game easily. UConn is a team that's probably a little bit better than what they were a few years ago, but at home, I think the Terps get the job done and win that game pretty. Week 2 at home against Michigan State, I think the Terps win that. I love the Jonathan Smith hire, but I think Michigan State's in a lot of trouble this year. I think that team's just going to struggle all year long. Watch out week 1 against FAU for Michigan State. I think that's going to be an upset. So,
ooh, okay. FAU almost upset Illinois last year or the year before.
Yeah.
23-17.
Tom Herman, I'm surprised he didn't get a Power 5 job. So, long year. Week 3 on the road against Virginia. Maryland gets the win. It's bad when the experts are saying that Virginia is going to be approved, but they're going to have the same record. So I think the Terps take care of business on the road against Virginia. Week 4 against Nova, if it was a basketball matchup, I'll be nervous, but since it's not, the Terps get a win. Week 5 on the road against Indiana. I think Indiana is going to be approved this year. They do bring in a lot of FCS and Group of 5 talent through the transfer portal. And I think that's going to show against a team like the Terps and give Mike Loxley credit. He's been building this team like a Big Ten football team. I think the Terps go on the road and at worst find a way to beat Indiana. But I do think Indiana is going to be approved this year. Then we get a bye next week. Northwestern at home. Maryland gets revenge after last year's terrible loss on a Friday night. Terps beat a Northwestern team that I think is going to take a step back. So the Terps start the season out 6-0, going into that Saturday game at home against Southern Cal.
Can I say, McD, that I love this matchup on October 19th with Southern Cal traveling across the country to College Park? Love that game.
I think it's going to be a great game. Mark,
You with us?
I'm here. Hello.
Okay.
The Southern Cal is preseason ranked 23. I think that's blasphemous. The reason why I think that's blasphemous is because that team built to play in the Big Ten. Oregon's the only team out of the 4 West Coast teams built to play in the Big Ten. I think Southern Cal is going to lose several games that nobody's expecting, and this is going to be because the Terps are built to play in the Big Ten, and Southern Cal is not. Southern Cal going to win at home against Southern Cal.
Okay, you were cutting out, but you're picking a win against USC?
Correct.
Okay.
I think Southern Cal goes 5-7 this year. I think the overrated team in college football.
They go 5-7.
Yes.
All right. I'm marking that baby down.
All
I
right.
got to pass that on to our USC guys tonight. That'll
All
be
right.
fun.
I'll be on and tell them that too.
Love it.
Next game on Minnesota.
Think we lost you again.
Gophers.
At Minnesota. Okay.
I think we lose.
Oh, okay.
On the road against Minnesota.
First loss of the season after going, 6-0?
No.
All right.
Bye. Next, on the road against Oregon.
Okay. We're losing you. I'm going to guess that's a loss.
Yes.
Okay.
Loss.
That makes sense.
Rutgers, another team that's being overrated. They have an easy schedule, yes. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah. We're not getting how you feel about it because unfortunately you're cutting out. So you said Rutgers has an easy schedule. Then what?
Maryland wins.
Maryland wins. Okay. Over Rutgers. Yeah. They're at home. Okay.
We lose the final 2 games.
Okay. 2 losses before that, 8-4.
Correct.
Iowa at home. You can't get that one done.
I have Iowa going 11-1 and making the playoffs.
Yeah, they could.
And I refuse to pick Maryland beat Penn State. So
even at home. No, they're at Penn State. Okay. So I would like this team. I understand that they have different uniforms this year. I've not checked those out.
Okay.
But I've heard that they've made some adjustments to the uniforms. But when they go to Oregon, I want them to go out there with the craziest uniforms that they've got in their closet. I want them to do that because I want them to challenge Oregon swag.
I agree. While we're losing 55-10, I agree. I have Oregon winning the national championship. So
okay, I have heard that from a few people. I'm going to be making that consideration myself here in the next few days because we're going to do our prediction show on Thursday.
All right, I won't be watching it live probably, but I'll watch it. One more thing before I go, since I'm cutting in and out. NC State wins the ACC.
I'm going to be considering that as well. I like that pick as well. I know that they don't play anyway. They've got a favorable schedule. I forget it off the top of my head. I know they don't play Miami, but other than that, they may not play Florida State. But yeah, I like Grayson McCall and NC State. Dave Doran's done a heck of a job for as many shots as I've taken at Dave Doran in the past. His last 3 or 4 seasons have been pretty stellar.
I have to agree.
He's got a good thing going there.
Mark, I'll let you go. Thanks for letting me give my official Terps prediction. Go Terps. We'll be in UConn week 1.
Thanks, McD. We'll see you.
See you.
Our buddy McD Sports stopping by. McD used to be a regular, just about every show calling up. but he has made his official Maryland prediction. I know that's why you tuned in today for the Maryland prediction. 8-4. Lose to Minnesota. Don't lose to USC. They're taking out USC at home. They're going to lose at Minnesota, at Oregon, and then they lose the final 2 games against Iowa and Penn State, which would be exciting for Maryland fans, thinking that they would go into the final 2 games of the season. They would be 8-2, and they would be 5-2 in the Big Ten. Therefore, they should have some kind of chance to go to the Big Ten championship game. They would have a chance at that point. We, of course, during the month of August here at the Voice of College Football have been brought to you by Chris Gates Fitness. We've enjoyed our partnership with Chris. He has a phenomenal program called Training Camp that he has launched for the football season with football fans in mind. You get the combination of Chris's instruction, his coaching, his training. You get the accountability of a community as well. It's phenomenal, and you might want to consider it because we know you care about your football. Of course, you care about your football, but you should also care about your fitness.
What's up, everybody? Chris here from Chris Gates Fitness and the online fitness training camp. Thanks for letting me pop in for a few seconds to tell you about what we got going on in training camp this month. And there's a lot happening, okay? The August program dropped just a few days ago. Everybody's getting into their August workouts, having a blast. The private group is full of discussion and chatter about people getting started, which I love to see. We're going to be doing weekly football pick'em here at the end of the month. That's when that starts. I'm going to be giving away free supplements to people who win that. I'm giving away a treadmill in September because we're doing a step count challenge as a group. All kinds of fun stuff coming, so I hope to see you there. Voice of College Football has a discount code, VOICE. You can still get a discount on your first month if you want to jump in. Would love to see you there. Talk to you in training camp.
We're already into the overtime segment here at the Voice of College Football. We're at the 103 mark. Do appreciate you being here. We are going full throttle for 1 hour with my takes, my rants, top-notch guests. We had Matthew Miller today, Cody Stovall. We will have excellent guests. We exchanged emails yesterday with Tony Barnhart, longtime ESPN, CBS Sports college football analyst and writer. So Tony Barnhart, we expect him to be joining us here in the next couple of weeks. Of course, we had Phil Steele on a couple of weeks ago, and Phil would like to come back. And so we're trying to figure out a time in which Phil Steele can come back before the season kicks off. Peter Burns, SEC Network, joined us a couple of weeks ago as well. Steve Dace, we've done 2 segments with Steve. And we will certainly be looking to have Steve back on a regular basis. A few other people that you would love to see on a regular basis, we are talking to about making that happen. All right. I have been known to predict a football game from time to time. I don't do it nearly as well as our buddy Steve Merrill from Wager Talk. We've had Steve on here for 6 seasons. This will be season number 6 with Steve, delivering our under the radar pick, which is exciting because you know that Steve is phenomenal in his under the radar picks, and you can catch him on Wager Talk. And again, you can catch him right here at the Voice of College Football every week. We record every Thursday. We just recorded a piece a couple days ago that we released looking at national championship odds, conference championship odds, Heisman odds. A lot of excellent information there with Steve. So check out that video we released a couple days ago. And again, Steve is going to join us for a 6th season every Thursday, looking at all the big games. And we also have a special offer for you here at the Voice of College Football. So please listen up. College football is even more exciting with some action on the line. And the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Let's start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread. I've got a 40-year track record. In fact, in 2023, at $100 played per game, you would have netted over $9,300. And guess what? I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill, our ace in the hole, show stopper from Wager Talk. 6 years with the voice of college football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under-the-radar pick, which went 21-5 against the spread the last 2 seasons. I repeat, 21-5 against the spread. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Steve Dace and Matt Zemek. Become a YouTube channel member or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and select the betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2024 a winner now. All right. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. I was hoping for an overtime today. I had some things to say about West Virginia and their response to my tweets, or whatever we call those these days now, since it's not Twitter, their posts on X. But maybe we'll hit that tomorrow. Show names. We start to get to that a number of times in regards to your show names, but we have selected a winner. And so we will certainly be gifting that particular person, that viewer, with gear from the Voice of College Football merch store. So look forward to that. Plus or minus 3. We made our way through the ACC and the Big 12. If you're unfamiliar with plus or minus 3, keep it locked in here at the Voice of College Football. We've got our prediction show coming up Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern time. And again, we've gone overtime for 6 minutes. If you would like us to go overtime in the future, please support the channel here at the Voice of College Football. We're here every Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern time, and we will see you. Texas show at 7 Eastern tonight, USC show at 10. I'll be back here at 10 in the morning Eastern time on Tuesday. College football is even more exciting with some action on the line, and the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Let's start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread. I've got a 40-year track record. In fact, in 2023, at $100 played per game, you would have netted over $9,300. And guess what? I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill, our ace in the hole, show stopper from Wager Talk. 6 years with the voice of college football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under-the-radar pick, which went 21-5 against the spread the last 2 seasons. I repeat, 21-5 against the spread. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Steve Dace and Matt Zemek. Become a YouTube channel member or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and select the betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2024 a winner now.